2025. Today, Friday the 17th of January. Welcome to everybody. Can I start, please, with any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence from Councillors Graham Thomas and Independent Councillor Mark Parkinson.
Thank you. And are there any disclosures of any personal or prejudicial interests, please, that anybody wants to flag? Okay, none indicated. Thank you. Item 3 of the agenda is to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting, that meeting held on the 11th of October. So I'm going to take, if I may, each page for accuracy to begin with. So page 1 and page 2. No issues. So if I can ask for a show of hands, please, just to confirm the accuracy of those meetings. Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Alison. Okay, item 4, which is probably one of the most substantial of today. At the last meeting, you'll recall that we went and spent some considerable time looking at the Standards Committee hearing procedure. I'm grateful to my colleagues on the authority for the work that you put in to capture all the things that we talked about at the time. So I'm not sure who I'm looking at, Adrian, Alison, Hugh, but thank you to the three of you for what you've done so far. I've only got one. Good morning, Oliver. I've only got one. I've only got two observations, if I may. The first is at the end of section 3.4, and it's H. So 3.4H. We talked about establishing whether any adjustments would be required, and the proposal currently is whether any reasonable adjustments would be required of any of the stated representatives. I think the conversation we had was not just about representatives, but also about the councillor themselves, or indeed anybody taking part in the hearing. So I wonder, can we just tweak that here and that word in slightly, please? So it's any reasonable adjustments required by anybody taking part in the hearing. I guess that's the flavour of what I'm trying to get across, please, not just the representatives. The only other observation I had is at 11.5, and we've added there, we propose to add, the civil burden of proof will be applied by the committee when considering their decision. I think I know what that means, as opposed to a criminal burden of proof. But I just wonder, Adrian, can you help me to clarify what you mean by that and whether we can actually make it clearer in the procedure, please?
Yes, I can do that. The civil burden of proof is on the balance of probabilities. Is it more likely than not that the thing has happened? The criminal burden of proof is beyond reasonable doubt, absolutely sure, or more or less sure. So there is a difference between the two. If you want me to include the words in the brackets after the civil burden of proof, i.e. on the balance of probabilities, then that can be done easily.
I think that would be my ask, if members are with me on that. I thought that's what you'd say, but if that's what we mean, let's just say that, because it might be that somebody coming before the panel doesn't know what that means. So I think that would be helpful, please. Those are my only two.
Interject, Mike, there. It should say the civil standard of proof.
Civil standard, I'm quite happy with that.
Thank you,
Well, no,
Michaela. That's helpful.
the burden is on the authority,
So,
isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, I can change that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, those are the only two that I had. Are there any other observations or comments that any members? Michaela, you've got your hand up. Is that from the previous one?
Sorry,
Thank you.
that was just my hand then. Yeah.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and thanks everyone for putting this all together now. I'm quite content with that and agree with what we just talked about there. Right at the end of the document on our page 11, I think it is, when it's talking about the appeals and who you have to write to, it's got there the local government division National Assembly for Wales. I think it should be Welsh Government, but I'll be corrected if I'm wrong.
Well spotted. Yes, I can change that.
Sorry to be nitpicky.
That's quite all right.
No, thanks, Mark. These things need to be correct. Thank you. Any other observations or comments, Janet?
Yes, it's the same. Right at the very end, in fact, the very last paragraph, all the way through, we're referring not to people in the first instant, but it says any appeal notice you file. Could it just say filed rather than you? I mean, that again, I'm being nitpicky, but we've avoided you all the way through the document. So thank you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you. This is our opportunity. Any other observations or comments from members? Margaret, thank you.
Can I say that I know it's been changed, but 8.1, and this is being nitpicky, I know, but is it grammatically correct to say if a council fails to attend or be represented at a hearing of which they have been notified? It's the royal we, isn't it, or whatever? I think I know it's been changed from he or she has been, but I think that what it's been changed to, is it actually grammatically correct? I wouldn't have thought so, but I don't know if it matters.
I think this is a point that we covered last time, which is
Yeah.
why which is why I think, Margaret, we've changed the pronouns throughout the document. I think it was around.
Yeah, you have. Yes, that was the example.
Yeah, a move away from he and she, and I think it was recognising that the world is in a different place, and how we use pronouns is just needed updated. So I think it's an example of that, Margaret. I think, if you're comfortable.
Yeah, no, well, I'm old-fashioned, you see. Okay, yes, I'm perfectly happy to accept it, but it just didn't read right to me. There we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more, I'm going to ask for a show of hands that we accept this as our revised procedure for the committee. Perfect, thank you. And again, thank you to all of those that have been involved in capturing the rich discussion we had at our last meeting. Okay, item 5. Hugh, do you want to lead us on this one, please?
Of course. You will all be aware of the unfortunate situation recently in the Ombudsman office, where one of their members of staff expressed some very political comments on a social media platform. That led to a big investigation by the Ombudsman's office into how unbiased they were in carrying out investigations. This led them to appointing I think Dr. Melissa McCulloch as the person to lead the review, and she was satisfied that the Ombudsman's office processes were robust in terms of safeguarding fairness and impartiality. However, Dr. McCulloch did make a recommendation which related to a recent change by the Ombudsman on whether or not an accused member is informed of the complaint against them until after assessment. So the Ombudsman is asking, part of the consultation process, is asking if anyone has any comments on the process. I'll explain the process in a moment to you, but the specific questions asked are outlined on page 21. I'm not going to read those out because you have them in front of you. But the argument is over at what stage should the person being complained against be informed that there is a complaint against them. The Ombudsman has recently taken the view that the complainant shouldn't know that there is a live complaint until such time as the Ombudsman's office have reviewed the complaint and have determined that there is actually even a complaint to deal with at all. Their thought process for this is to protect the councillor. Why upset them for no reason if the complaint isn't valid? And B, to prevent tit for tat complaints. So if I know you've complained about me, I'll complain about you, even though your complaint about me had no merit and it wasn't going anywhere to start with. So that's the thinking there. So I'll let you think of that, and then perhaps I'll come back and add some further things after you've considered that. But the explanation is set out on page 20 of the agenda.
Thank you. And in terms of what we're looking for today, I suppose I'm interested in members' views. Ideally, I would like to have if not a consensus, a summary of our views as the council, that we could then ask either Hugh or Adrian to respond on our behalf as a council, as a committee. So just two things, I think, before we go any further. We're all, including co-opted members, we're all subject to the code of conduct. So in theory, any of us could have a complaint, myself included. But perhaps statistically, and I'll say no more strongly than that, statistically, it's historically it's been more likely that a councillor member will be subject to this rather than a co-opted member. And as I say, I hope that never comes back to bite me on the bottom, but that's statistically. So I'm particularly interested in the views of our councillor colleagues this morning, but I will then also open it up to co-opted members. So we've got Councillor Lewis and Councillor James with us this morning. I don't know which of you wishes to go first. Do you have a view, please? Mike?
Yeah, being Chief Whip with the ruling administration, I can have a big overview of what's been happening over, perhaps not this year, but over the last 5-6 years. And as Hugh alluded to earlier, there is a lot of tit for tat mentality that happens occasionally when something is brought up, and as Hugh said, it could be something very minor that the ombudsman would dismiss immediately, but the damage is done then. So I think this is a very good recommendation, and I fully endorse it, basically.
So for me to be clear, Mike, that you would support members knowing about the complaint, because currently you don't get to, the member concerned doesn't get to know. Are you saying that you would?
The opposite. I'm saying that it should be withheld from anyone until the ombudsman actually makes a decision on it, and then if it's a negative decision, that's when they should be told. That's my own view.
No, that's helpful. Just help me a little bit more, to help Hugh and Adrian, who are writing back on our behalf. What would be your reasons for that? Why would you say that that's a better way forward, please?
Well, it's always been the case in law that you're only guilty after you've had your trial, and it's like gainsaying that the chap is guilty or the lady's guilty, the councillor is guilty, but before there's anything been determined of whether they are guilty or not. So, and as I said, going back to what Hugh said, there is a lot of recrimination, inter-party recrimination, especially if somebody makes a complaint about a certain party and a political party, and then somebody within that political party will then reciprocate. So it's an ongoing niggle, basically. So I think this is a very good recommendation. Thank you.
Oliver, can I ask your views, please, as an elected member?
Yeah, I actually completely agree. I think that looking from the standpoint of a councillor who, if you were to have a complaint made about you, or number of complaints made about you, I personally would prefer to not know about it and live in blissful ignorance until the ombudsman has decided whether that is going to go any further or not. Simply for the fact that, if somebody expresses an opinion, they may have complaints put against them, and it can be quite a stressful time if you're sort of preempting what's being investigated, what's being said about you. Some people may prefer to know that there is a complaint ongoing and being investigated, but I think it's better in terms of stress levels and recriminations and putting in complaints about, that the person you know has made a complaint about you. So yeah, I think it's a good recommendation that we that I agree with anyway. That we should not. The Ombudsman should not let people know about a complaint until the time comes that a decision has been made whether it should go forward or not.
Okay, that's really clear. Thank you both. Just for me to be clear, though, I think the recommendation is the other way here, isn't it? And isn't the recommendation from the review is that councillors would know? So I think no. I've heard what you said, and you're both saying you'd rather not know, and you'd rather the council member not know. But I think the recommendation is the other way here.
Yeah, just to clarify, the Ombudsman used to tell councillors, and then a few years ago they decided not to tell councillors, exactly as what you want. The McCulloch review suggests that councillors shouldn't be told, and I don't think the Ombudsman, reading this, I think the Ombudsman prefers not telling councillors. So they're gaining now consultation to get the response to determine whether it's worth changing. I will throw in a counter view. If you were being complained about, the complainant probably would be telling everyone they can that they're got a complaint against you, even though the Ombudsman will have said that they shouldn't be sharing that information. But even in compiling that report, before they get the response of the Ombudsman, they will be causing damage and negativity against the individual councillor. And then all of a sudden that councillor is blissfully unaware, and they can be seen as an unlevel, a not level playing field, because you're unaware of what's going on. So if I'm honest, I can see both sides of this argument, and it's I'm not sure whether there is a right or wrong answer, and I suspect each individual councillor would have a different view. But unfortunately, I don't think it's reasonable for the Ombudsman to have check with the councillor first approach, because the fact they're checking with you is giving it away. So, you know, it's something you need to consider on the balance of what's best generally.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Hugh. Mark, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with our two councillors here. I do feel that if someone, a member of the public, has made an official complaint through to the Ombudsman, and then the Ombudsman, a public body, is then going through an official process to investigate it. And we know the vast majority of these, they make the decision, no, it's not going to go any further. But, you know, a certain process has begun. And I feel that if I was a councillor in that situation, I would want to know that someone had officially made a complaint against me, and that I was being investigated. I know that then if it's found that there may be a case to answer, then a further process goes into play, and you then have your chance to stand up for yourself and give your and challenge that complaint. But I do feel that you should be told about it. I'm not sure about, I mean, the references to like tit for tat complaints, if it's councillor on councillor, then, you know, we have local resolution protocols to try and deal with that before it ever gets to like an official complaint, if you like. But what they're talking about here is a member of the public making an official complaint to the Ombudsman, and I think everybody should be aware of what's going on right from the start. No disrespect to the councillors, but that's my view.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to push you in the same way that I pushed Councillor Mike Lewis And in terms of your reasons why, so Mike's response was innocent until proven guilty. Oliver's response was stress levels, and to a certain extent tit for tat from the two. So I've heard your view, Mark. What would be a reason for that view, please?
I think if you to sort of narrow it down to it's transparency. It's so that everybody involved, the person who's made the complaint is aware they've made it. The officials in the Ombudsman's office are aware of it. Well, the individual who's being investigated at that very initial stage, and I know it's not a full-blown investigation, but something starts to get looked into, needs to be aware of. So it's transparency. That's where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Mark. That's helpful. Okay, any other members? Michaela.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mark. It is about transparency, and it's also about natural justice, isn't it? If somebody's made a complaint about you, I think somebody mentioned equality of arms. I think that's probably right. So I'd be for this recommendation of the member being informed at the time that the complaint is made. Because the complaints are also made by councillors on councillors, aren't they? It's not. I think Mark was talking about members
Correct.
of the public. I'm guessing that could also it would also be encompassing councillor-made complaints. So that's my view.
Thank you, Michaela. That's helpful. Okay, any other members?
Can I come back in here, Mike?
Yeah, Councillor Lewis.
I've read through this now. I can't see anything alluding to members of the public, as Mark was talking about, and neither does it say councillor on councillor. It's just a general overview. This is, as I say, there's arguments for and arguments against. If it's a member of the public, then perhaps councillor should be informed. But as for councillor on councillor, I do think it tends to deteriorate and get a bit childish at the end of the day.
Thank you, Mike. So Hugh, just to confirm, I think we are saying the same thing, that this is about any complaint. So it can be from a council member, but it can also be from the member of public. And the recommendation doesn't differentiate. The recommendation is either they are told or they're not told.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to be absolutely clear, this is any complaint in relation to the code of conduct. That complaint can be made by any person or organisation against either a councillor or, of course, a co-opted member. And notwithstanding what was said at the start, I'm unaware of any code of conduct complaint being made against a co-opted member. But you were all there. Everyone in this room is subject to, well, apart from the officers, we're subject to a different code, but you're subject to that code of conduct. So it's anybody can make that, be it public, be it a co-opted member against a councillor against a co-opted member, a public against. It's any complaint using the code of conduct as the driving force. Hopefully that helps.
Well, Mike.
Just to come back in there, the only problem I see is that if it's councillor on councillor, a lot of frivolous complaints can be levelled at a certain councillor, and we have got a duty of care as councillors for well-being and looking at, and it could really affect their mental health if this continued drip, maybe all frivolous and never be anything would come of them, but by actually attacking, it could deteriorate the person who's getting attacked of their mental health. That's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, anybody else wanted to come in on this one? Margaret? On mute, I think, Margaret.
Sorry about that. Just to say really that I agree with Mark and Michaela on balance. I see the arguments on the other side as very clearly expressed by the councillor members, but I think it is natural justice, and also I think the point has to be made that sometimes complainants will share their grievances with other people, and I don't think it would be helpful. I personally would not like it if the first I knew of an investigation or assessment of my behaviour had been undertaken and I was to hear about it from a third person. And I think there is a real risk of that unless the person is informed. So that I'd just like to add that comment, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Okay, Janet, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm just picking up the same as Michaela and Margaret there, that I feel that it is about transparency and equity, and you know, the rumour mongering that you've talked about and the tit for tat thing. I think that that gossip would be going on, and to hear about it from a third party would be even more stressful than hearing about it from the Ombudsman. The question I had was, would it suffice to just to let the councillor know that there had been an investigation without providing all of the details behind that? And that was the only thing that I wanted to add that was different. And was there need for that right at the very beginning to name names? So you've been complained about by this person and it's about that. But just to flag up that a complaint has been made at this initial stage. What bothers me is what's going to happen with the processes. So should it be redefined that for a councillor we follow this? If it's a member of the public, we follow this, that there's different rules and policies and procedures. And that's what I would be looking for, and maybe suggesting that they, before they make this decision, that they have the policies to follow behind that, that we can consider as well.
So to be clear, just on that last point, Janet, are you saying that you would support a different policy depending on where the complaint has come from, i.e. member of the public or
Absolutely, and that picks up the points that are being made, that if it's a councillor, there's maybe an opportunity to do it one way, if it's a member of the public, another. I don't know if that's feasible, but it's just what occurred to me when I was reading it and listening to the arguments today.
Mark, did you want to come back in? Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and apologies, Mike, for going off on one about members of the public. You're quite right. It talks about if any complaint has been made to the Ombudsman, and I think what was in my head was the vast majority of complaints about a councillor that go to the Ombudsman are usually from members of the public. But that doesn't change my view. You know, I do feel that, you know, if it is going to that official body, then the councillor needs to be informed about it. And going back to what we've referred to as inverted commas tit for tat, councillor complaining against councillor. You know, ideally, that sort of situation should be dealt with by the you know, the local resolution process. You know, the informal ways of dealing with things. But if someone has chosen to make it official, go to the Ombudsman, then you know, I go back to what I said originally. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, that's been a really helpful debate. Unless anybody else wants to come back in, I'm going to try to summarise. I see your hand here. I was just going to ask you to clarify. Local resolution, that doesn't apply, does it? Or
There's a couple of points being said there. Just picking on the last point made about local resolution. Local resolution can't be used for code of conduct complaints. Code of conduct, that's an Ombudsman issue. It's seriously there to start with. It would have to process. Personally, I wouldn't favour different rules for who makes the complaint. I'm sure the Ombudsman wouldn't want that, because they're trying to make it a streamlined process and it would get very confusing. And I'm also conscious of the ability then to frustrate the system by getting whoever wants to make the complaint, be it a councillor, be it a co-opted member, be it a member of the public, getting somebody else to make it on their behalf, so that they get a different route in. And I don't think that's wise. I think all complaints should be treated the same. As I've said, I can see both sides of the argument as to should you be told or shouldn't you be told. I'm sure some people would rather know and some people would rather not know. The tit for tat argument, I'm a little bit reticent about that, because the two-stage ombudsman test sifts out so many, and I think it's fair to say from the annual reports, so few complaints get beyond the two-stage test, because the ombudsman said they don't meet that simple test. So two-stage, the tit for tat, yes, might be a spike in complaints, but they're not going anywhere. So the simple point for you is, the way I see it, would you prefer to know there's a complaint against you, or would you prefer not to know? I think that's what it comes down to.
Thank you, Hugh. Okay, well, I'm pleased to say on this particular one, it's not a decision we have to make, so I don't have to reach, we don't have to reach consensus on it. I think what I'm going to ask, I don't know whether it's Hugh or Adrian, but I think I would like a response to go back to the consultation, please, from the committee, but capturing, and if I can summarise, I'll attempt to do that in 45 seconds. I think there's a clear view from the two elected members that we hear that they would prefer not to know. For the reasons, I won't repeat the reasons, but Mike and Oliver have been very clear for a number of reasons why they, as an elected member, would rather not know. There was a clear view from the co-opted members that spoke that the person being complained about should know, and again, without repeating, there were reasons given for that. I think if that's the view of the committee, that there was a clear demarcation between the view of elected members and co-opted, I don't have a problem with that. If they wanted to know our view, that was the outcome. I think I would like, because it did come up in conversation, that the question was raised by the committee as to whether it would be feasible and even helpful for there to be a demarcation between the source of the complaint. But in saying that, we did recognise that could perhaps have other unintended consequences. And if we put it no more strongly than that, I think that probably captures the spirit of the debate we've had today. So it's not a decision we have to make. They're asking our views, and it's been a healthy, I think, exchange of views from our respective viewpoints. Happy with that, Hugh?
Yeah.
Members happy? Perfect. Thank you. That's been really helpful. Thank you, and interesting. Okay. Item 5, which is just for information, I think. Hugh, do you want to just or Adrian?
Yeah, I think so.
6. I'm sorry.
Of course. It's just the standard list of some complaints that have been made that the Ombudsman is not investigating. There's no specific information beyond what's on the table, just 2 in relation to Swansea councillors and 1 in relation to community council. Nothing to add, just for information. Oh, sorry, I'm mistaken. The one in the community council one is being investigated. Sorry, I missed that point. So we will hear in due course whether it comes to this committee or not.
Thank you, Hugh. Can I just slip in an item 7, if I may, which is any other business? I'm conscious that, Margaret, this is your penultimate meeting. We've got one more on the 21st of March, when we'll have a proper opportunity to thank you for your 9 and 11, 12th service years. So we will have an opportunity to say a proper goodbye to you. But Hugh, can I just bring you in terms of, I'm conscious that we have to run a process to replace Margaret as a co-opted member. And this is probably a good opportunity for me to make a personal announcement to tell the committee that I have decided, for personal reasons, to stand down from the committee at the end of this municipal year. So, Hugh, if I can ask you just to bear that in mind, that the committee will be looking to appoint 2 co-opted members, not just Margaret, please. So could I just ask you quickly to tell us what the process looks like?
Of course, and yeah, sorry to hear that news. Chair, that's you have been an asset to the committee. There's no doubt about that, and we'll speak to you further about that on the 21st of March, no doubt. But yeah, thank you for both for your time, Margaret, as well. With regard to the process, I will place an advert in 2 newspapers, hopefully end of Jan or very early February, advertising now 2 vacancies. I'll probably look to give 3 weeks opportunity for people to apply. Historically, those those adverts in the newspapers don't attract many people, so I will be asking you as a committee and various other contacts I have to try and share those adverts widely so that we can sufficient people apply so that we can move to the next process, which will be to shortlist and then to make a interview and then to make a recommendation to council. The body that shortlists and makes a recommendation to council is the Standards Committee Vacancy Panel. That is made up of the chair of the Standards Committee. It's made up of several councillors, and it's made up of the Community Town Council representative. So with this regard, it would only be yourself, Mike, on that body, and I think you're on it, Mike, from memory, but I'd have to check. It's councillors otherwise, and Councillor Mark Parkinson. They will interview, and given the process, I would look then to get a report to either April Council or to May Council as the final time, and then that person would start with it with immediate effect or whatever the appropriate times are. But I would really rely on you lot to share that advert because it helps no end, you wouldn't believe. Nothing else to add to that.
Thank you, Hugh. And as I say, I'm standing down for purely personal reasons, but at the risk of looking across the pond, I'm happy to stay on to the end of the municipal year just to help the transition, really. So if that's helpful to the process, I'm more than happy to do that. Okay, I don't have any other notices of any other business, so I'm going to close the meeting to thank you all for your very active participation this morning, and to note that our next meeting is on Friday, 21st of March at 10 a.m. Thank you all.